Chapter 2 of William the Conqueror. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. William the Conqueror by Jacob Abbott. Chapter 2. The Birth of William. Although Rouen is now very far below all the other cities of Normandy in point of magnitude and importance, and although Rollo, in his conquest of the country, made it his principal headquarters and his main stronghold, it did not continue exclusively the residence of the Dukes of Normandy in after years. The father of William the Conqueror was Robert, who became subsequently the Duke, the sixth in the line. He resided, at the time when William was born, in a great castle at Falaise. Falaise, as will be seen upon the map, is west of Rouen, and it stands, like Rouen, at some distance from the sea. The castle was built upon a hill, at a little distance from the town. It has long since ceased to be habitable, but the ruins still remain, giving a picturesque but mournful beauty to the eminence which they crown. They are often visited by travellers, who go to see the place where the great hero and conqueror was born. The hill on which the old castle stands terminates, on one side, at the foot of the castle walls, in a precipice of rocks, and on two other sides also, the ascent is too steep to be practicable for an enemy. On the fourth side there is a more gradual declivity, up which the fortress could be approached by means of a winding roadway. At the foot of this roadway was the town. The access to the castle from the town was defended by a ditch and drawbridge, with strong towers on each side of the gateway to defend the approach. There was a beautiful stream of water which meandered along through the valley, near the town, and after passing it, it disappeared, winding around the foot of the precipice which the castle crowned. The castle enclosures were shut in with walls of stone of enormous thickness, so thick, in fact, they were, that some of the apartments were built in the body of the wall. There were various buildings within the enclosure. There was, in particular, one large square tower, several stories in height, built of white stone. This tower, it is said, still stands in good preservation. There was a chapel also, and various other buildings and apartments within the walls, for the use of the ducal family and their numerous retinue of servants and attendants, for the storage of munitions of war, and for the garrison. There were watch towers on the corners of the walls, and on various lofty projecting pinnacles, where solitary sentinels watched, the livelong day and night, for any approaching danger. These sentinels looked down on a broad expanse of richly cultivated country, fields beautified with groves of trees, and with the various colours presented by the changing vegetation, while meandering streams gleamed with their silvery radiance among them, and hamlets of labourers and peasantry were scattered here and there, giving life and animation to the scene. We have said that William's father was Robert, the sixth Duke of Normandy, so that William himself, being his immediate successor, was the seventh in the line. And as it is the design of these narratives not merely to amuse the reader with what is entertaining as a tale, but to impart substantial historical knowledge, we must prepare the way for the account of William's birth, by presenting a brief chronological view of the whole ducal line, extending from Rollo to William. We recommend to the reader to examine with special attention this brief account of William's ancestry, for the true causes which led to William's invasion of England cannot be fully appreciated without thoroughly understanding certain important transactions in which some members of the family of his ancestors were concerned before he was born. This is particularly the case with the Lady Emma, who, as will be seen by the following summary, was the sister of the third Duke in the line. The extraordinary and eventful history of her life is so intimately connected with the subsequent exploits of William, that it is necessary to relate it in full, and it becomes, accordingly, the subject of one of the subsequent chapters of this volume. Chronological History of the Norman Line. Rollo, first Duke of Normandy. From A.D. 912 to A.D. 917. It was about 870 that Rollo was banished from Norway, and a few years after that, at most, that he landed at France. It was not, however, until 912 that he concluded his treaty of peace with Charles, so as to be fully invested with the title of Duke of Normandy. He was advanced in age at this time, and after spending 5 years in settling the affairs of his realm, he resigned his dukedom into the hands of his son, so that he might spend the remainder of his days in rest and peace. He died in 922, 5 years after his resignation. William I, second Duke of Normandy, from 917 to 942. William was Rollo's son. He began to reign, of course, 5 years before his father's death. He had a quiet and prosperous reign of about 25 years, but he was assassinated at last by a political enemy in 942. Richard, third Duke of Normandy, from 942 to 996. He was only 10 years old when his father was assassinated. He became involved in long and arduous wars with the King of France, which compelled him to call in aid of more Northmen from the Baltic. His new allies, in the end, gave him as much trouble as the old enemy, with whom they came to help William contend, and he found it very hard to get them away. He wanted, at length, to make peace with the French king, and to have them leave his dominions, but they said that was not what they came for. Richard had a beautiful daughter, named Emma, who afterward became a very important political personage, as will be seen more fully in a subsequent chapter. Richard died in 996, after reigning 54 years. Richard II, fourth Duke of Normandy, from 996 to 1026. Richard II was a son of Richard I, and as his father had been engaged during his reign in contentions with his sovereign lord, the King of France, he in his turn was harassed by long-continued struggles with his vassals, the barons and nobles of his own realm. He too sent for Northmen to come and assist him. During his reign there was a great contest in England between the Saxons and the Danes, and Ethelred, who was the Saxon claimant to the throne, came to Normandy, and soon afterward married the Lady Emma, Richard's sister. The particulars of this event, from which the most momentous consequences were afterward seen to flow, will be given in full in a future chapter. Richard died in 1026. He left two sons, Richard and Robert. William the Conqueror was the son of the youngest, and was born 2 years before this Richard II died. Richard III, fifth Duke of Normandy, from 1026 to 1028. He was the oldest brother, and of course succeeded to the dukedom. His brother Robert was then only a baron, his son William, afterward the Conqueror, being then about 2 years old. Robert was very ambitious and aspiring, and eager to get possession of the dukedom himself. He adopted every possible means to circumvent and supplant his brother, and, as is supposed, shortened his days by the anxiety and vexation which he caused him, for Richard died suddenly and mysteriously only 2 years after his accession. It was supposed by some, in fact, that he was poisoned, though there was never any satisfactory proof of this. Robert, sixth Duke of Normandy, from 1028 to 1035. Robert, of course, succeeded his brother, and then, with the characteristic inconstancy of selfishness and ambition, he employed all the power of his realm in helping the King of France to subdue his younger brother, who was evincing the same spirit of seditiousness and insubmission that he had himself displayed. His assistance was of great importance to King Henry; it, in fact, decided the contest in his favour, and thus one younger brother was put down in the commencement of his career of turbulence and rebellion, by another who had successfully accomplished a precisely similar course of crime. King Henry was very grateful for the service thus rendered, and was ready to do all in his power, at all times, to co-operate with Robert in the plans which the latter might form. Robert died in 1035, when William was about 11 years old. And here we close this brief summary of the history of the ducal line, as we have already passed the period of William's birth, and we return accordingly to give in detail some of the particulars of that event. Although the Dukes of Normandy were very powerful potentates, reigning as they did, almost in the character of independent sovereigns, over one of the richest and most populous territories of the globe, and though William the Conqueror was the son of one of them, his birth was nevertheless very ignoble. His mother was not the wife of Robert his father, but a poor peasant girl, the daughter of an humble tanner of Falaise; and indeed William's father, Robert, was not himself the duke at this time, but a simple baron, as his father was still living. It was not even certain that he would ever be the duke, as his older brother, who of course would come before him, was then also alive. Still, as the son and prospective heir of the reigning duke, his rank was very high. The circumstances of Robert's first acquaintance with the tanner's daughter were these. He was one day returning home to the castle from some expedition on which he had been sent by his father, when he saw a group of peasant girls standing on the margin of the brook, washing clothes.